So let's talk about AVIDs. Okay, so what is an AVID? An AVID is an agent visual inspection disclosure. This is a form that is provided by C.A.R, the California Association of Realtors, and it basically is an extension of the seller's transfer disclosure statement, what we call a TDS. There are only a few lines for the agent to provide notes regarding their visual inspection of the property. And so C.A.R prepared an AVID form as an extension to those notes, or that section for notes, for an agent to properly provide information regarding each room, each section of the property appropriately. So essentially it is an extension of the TDS. I have a copy of an AVID here with me just so I can have notes, but an AVID is the agent's responsibility to provide a diligent visual inspection of properties. This is for residential properties, 1 to 4 units. What does that mean? You are literally stepping into your realm of duty and providing a visual of what you're seeing throughout the property. These are to be material facts passed on to a potential buyer in their decision-making process, whether or not they are satisfied with this property and want to move forward. If you happen to represent both, you only need to do one. That is a common question that I get. One AVID will suffice for both sides of representation, but essentially this is your time to go through the property room by room and note things that could potentially affect a buyer's decision. The number one question that I receive about AVIDs is, do I need to do one? And the answer is, it depends on your broker. So a lot of brokers prefer to have an AVID from their agents. I understand in that aspect because it is a liability issue. You can't say that you were not at the property when you had to walk the property and take notes of each room. And so having an actual AVID form allows space for that to happen, right? But secondly, it proves your diligence in that the AVID was completed, that you actually laid eyes on the property and took notes and passed them on, right? Everything is being handled properly. But there are some brokers who do not require you to have an AVID, and that's perfectly okay, because remember, an AVID is an extra document that is just an extension of the TDS. Sometimes you are walking through that property and there's absolutely nothing to note. Maybe it is immaculate. I get why some agents choose not to do one. However, you'll want to follow your broker's advice. If they require one, then you want to make sure that it's getting done. So if you have to provide an AVID, let's talk about some red flags. Remember, an AVID is only required for properties that are residential up to 4 units. So if you have a duplex, yes, I would recommend that you do one for each side. One may have a crack in the flooring and one may be perfect. So there are places at the top of an AVID form to note the units. So just make sure that you're covering your bases with that. Secondly, a lot of times I will see people submit an AVID and all through it, it just says, looks okay, or looks fine, or everything's perfect, you know, that kind of thing. You want to stick to language that is factual, matter of fact, that will affect desirability or value. For example, let's say you see a scratch on the wall. Just state that there's a scratch on maybe the northeast wall below the window. Noted. It's factual, it's visual, so you want to be cautious about the facts that you're stating. But if you're stating something that is out of your realm of expertise, you become responsible for that. So you want to be very cautious, be descriptive, but do not step into facts that you cannot support. Another thing is, it is not necessarily just visual. So although it does state that it's a visual inspection, you should also be making notes about what you hear. A lot of times people will hear a lot of kids maybe outside because it backs up to a school, or maybe you hear a barking dog every time you're at the property. That may be something that a buyer would be very interested in, and it could make or break their decision whether they want to move forward. So I do recommend that if you smell anything odd or you hear anything odd, in addition to what you're visually seeing, be sure to add those types of notes into your AVID. And again, make sure they're factual. If you don't know anything, outside of your realm of duty, please stay within your realm. But, make sure that the buyer understands this is what I identified as something that may be potentially important to you. Okay. Now, at the top of page 2, there is some information about specifics at the time of the completion of the AVID. Number 1, the date. Number 2, the time of day. And number 3, the weather conditions. Lastly, there's also a line for who else was present. This is all very good information. Number 1, the date, of course, is pretty self-explanatory, but time of day is important because depending on whether it's early in the morning or it's late at night, visually things may change for you, right? If it is storming outside and cloudy and, raining, you may have different visual aspects of that property versus if it's sunny and hot. So I do recommend that at the top of page 2, always be sure to add the time of day. It goes right next to the date, but also be sure to add the weather conditions because that does affect things. If it was dry and it's the middle of summer, you may not see a leak like you would if it was raining for 24 hours straight. Now, your AVID does not replace any other inspection. Your buyer should still be performing their own inspections or at least advised to do so if they choose to make that decision to move forward. Your AVID does not replace a home or pest inspection or roof inspection, that type of thing. So this is just something in addition to as a duty from the agent. So just be sure that, again, this does not replace something else that you would be encouraging or discussing with your buyer to perform on their own. Now, let me know if any of this information helped you. I hope that this will be something that you could utilize with your next transaction. If you're interested in more tips and tricks regarding real estate transactions, please consider subscribing and becoming a part of the TC team. We'd love to have you. Bye-bye.